I grew up in a very small town in Maine. About 5 miles away, one way on my bicycle, was this little convenience store that sold comic books. My favorite was Jack Kirby's Commandy. His stories were fairly simplistic in their style and pacing. The writing was very easy. It was very fast-paced, but his panels were so explosive and action-driven. This splash page to this dramatic two-page spread. And I just said from that day on, I want to be that. I want to be Jack Kirby. I want to be the guy that writes and draws and tells all these stories. Peter and I shared a house in Dover, New Hampshire. His wife and him had rented it, and they had a spare room. So Peter and I had met, and we decided to form a little studio called Mirage Studios, which was a mirage. It was our living room. I always thought it was my job to annoy him while he was trying to watch his programs. So one night I did this sketch of a turtle standing upright. He had a mask on, nunchucks strapped to his arms, and I put it on his lapboard, and I said, this is going to be the next big thing. It's going to be a Ninja Turtle. So I did this pencil sketch of 4 of them, all with different weapons, in this dramatic pose with a Ninja Turtle logo. That night, he inked it in and added Teenage Mutant to the logo, and we were just falling over laughing. We thought it was the funniest thing ever. We got up the next day, and as I love to say, we didn't have any distracting painting work going on, so we said, you know, we should really come up with a story that tells how these characters got to be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And that was around November 1983, and we started working on the first issue almost immediately. And we were very lucky early on that when the first issue sold out and sold well, and then a year later, by the time we were doing issue 4 and 5, we went from 3,000 copies with the first issue to 100,000 copies by issue 4 or 5. We were making a living drawing comics. To us, even before the movies and the cartoons and anything like that happened, the dream had come true for us that we were drawing comic books and we were able to pay our rent. We were kind of discovering who these characters really were, the Turtles, their personalities as each issue evolved, because it was an evolution. We were figuring it out as we went along. And I probably heard it later in working on stories that somebody had said, the badder and the smarter the bad guy is, the greater it makes your hero look. The Shredder actually his costume has an interesting origin in that he came from Peter and I doing dishes one night. Peter would wash and I'd dry, and as we were working on the development of the first issue, trying to come up with a bad guy, I was drying, and there was this triangular metal cheese grating thing. I was drying the inside, and I saw my hand up inside it with these little cheese grating things. I'm like, oh man, would you imagine a guy that had this on his arms as a weapon? He'd be like the Grater. He'd be like Great Man. And Peter was like, how about Shredder? He'd be like the Shredder. So we loved the name, and through a couple different versions of the costume, we came up with Shredder. When you look back, what Peter and I did initially was only 15 issues. There was the first 11 issues, a 4 one-issue microseries, and that was the foundation for the entire Turtle legend, I guess, for lack of a better term. That's the foundation that everything else was built upon. One of the coolest parts of having created something like the Turtles, when I go to shows or do signings, whether it be massive shows like San Diego Comic-Con, or doing small signings for a neighborhood comic book store, the fans are what is the most awesome part, and they all have a story to tell, a personal experience. They were touched by either the characters, something that you drew, or something that you published. When I first was, going to shows, I remember meeting Jack Kirby for the first time. I thought I was going to pass out. I always said that, man, if I ever have fans, that's what I want to be. I want to enjoy that experience with them. It's contagious, it's invigorating, it's inspiring, and it really makes me want to work harder and do a better job. And it's just great to meet these awesome people, because they're very sincere, and when you look back to where we started and what we did with the first issue in 1984 and reach this sort of iconic status, that is pretty cool, and it's great to be a steward of something that awesome.